This is Hannah Gould next to me, and I would love to introduce her here. Just let me tell you that this is our December webinar, a collaborative presentation by the Parent Training and Information Center and the Recruitment Training and Support Center at the Federation for Children with Special Needs. My name is Janie Greco, and I am the Training and Support Specialist at RTSC. Our technical producer is Renee Williams, who is right now sweating a little bit because but doing a great job. Today's webinar is Developing Self-Regulation Skills and Self-Awareness Through Yoga. Our presenter is Hannah Gould, MED, ERYT, which I hope you'll explain what that means, who has directed the therapeutic yoga program at NESCA since 2007. Hannah also teaches adaptive yoga classes for adults with physical and cognitive disabilities at local residential and day programs. In 2013, Hannah developed a unique visual yoga program called Yoga Connects in response to the particular learning strengths and needs of yoga students with Autism Spectrum Disorders. Hannah is currently offering Yoga Connects trainings for parents and professionals. During the webinar, please type your questions in the toolbox and feel free to engage with other attendees. We will leave time at the end of the hour to address the questions. If your question is not answered live, please send us an email and we will do our best to follow up with you. If you are interested in learning more about the Federation, please go to our website at www.fcsn.org and explore all the different programs, including how to volunteer to become a special education surrogate parent or attend one of our many trainings presented by the Parent Training Information Center. So Hannah, welcome.
Thank you, Jane.
And I believe that you can explain how this is going to work, where you're going to be, we're going to show the screen and that you're going to be doing some actual yoga demonstrations while you're speaking, so to speak.
Sure.
Okay.
And I won't be showing anything that requires getting down on the floor, getting down on your hands and knees. Really the idea today is some simple techniques that can be used seated or standing or at a desk. So I'll actually be inviting participants to sort of try things along with me at home, and hopefully we all leave feeling a little more relaxed.
All right. Let me just see if I can bring this forward. Oops. Okay, I'm trying to do something here, guys, that may, we're working from a PDF, so.
Can you get me to the next slide?
I'm trying to.
Okay, that's the goal. I'll talk a little bit while
there you go. There's my granddaughter.
Probably better to look at than I am. No worries.
All right.
So I'll talk a little bit while we get the slides
good.
underway there. So as Jane said, my name is Hannah Gould, and I'll give a little bit of background on myself and sort of where I came from, how I arrived here. The MED after my name refers back to my early professional career as a special education teacher. I got a master's degree in special education at Simmons, and I spent 2 years as an enthusiastic young special education teacher working in a substantially separate classroom with 6th and 7th graders. And what I learned there was that I absolutely loved working with kids, but I didn't particularly enjoy teaching academics. And I really felt that the social and emotional needs of the students in my class seemed to be calling to me a lot more loudly than the need to, in that moment, get them to do a math assignment. So for myself, I chose to step out of public education, and I say that with the deepest and greatest respect for anybody who's in that world of public education, because it's hard work. And from there, I moved on to work for many years at a program called Academy Metro West, which was a gym-based program. So I was an activity-based skills counselor working on self-awareness, self-regulation, social skills, self-esteem in a physical setting in a gym where we got to run around and play cooperative games. So what I learned there was that working with play and working with movement really was where I wanted to be. Those are very powerful tools for teaching self-awareness and self-regulation. I was on a parallel path in my personal life of really delving into yoga. This is about 15 years ago. I sort of fell in love with yoga and started taking every class and taking every training and workshop and got certified as a yoga teacher and was working at fitness clubs teaching yoga classes to adults. And somewhere along the line, the light bulb went off that everything I wanted to bring to my students was right there in yoga, that I had the complete toolbox that I needed. I just needed to start bringing that into my students' lives, classrooms, homes, clinical settings, any way that I could. So I was very fortunate around that time to cross paths with Ann Helmus, director of NESCA, which stands for Neuropsychological and Educational Services for Children and Adolescents, based in Newton. Great program that is mostly known for doing neuropsych testing and referring kids out for services. But we decided to start a therapeutic yoga program in-house, and it's been quite successful, and that's where I've been for almost 10 years at this point. So what I want to give people today is a little taste of what I do at NESCA, and also a little taste of some things that you could do with yourself, with your students, with your children at home or in a classroom. Great, thank you. So this first page here is one of the pages from my visual yoga curriculum, Yoga Connects, and I developed this curriculum specifically because I was working with a lot of students with autism, a lot of students who were low verbal or non-speaking or had other communication or attentional challenges, and I found that having visual supports is absolutely huge. So we'll start here, and I invite you to move towards the front of your chair if you're sitting, and get into a position where you can plant both of your feet flat on the floor, lined up parallel. So we're moving at the front of the chair so that we're not tempted to sort of lean back and slouch. We're waking up the central nervous system. We're engaging the core. And if you press your feet down a little bit into the floor, you'll feel that core engagement even more. I invite you to bring your hands to your heart, elbows high. This is called Anjali Mudra. Mudra is a hand position, and this represents offering our best self to the world. And that's really what yoga is about, is accessing and offering our best selves to the world. So right hand, left hand, there's a lot of nerve endings in the hands. We bring the hands together. We're already helping to balance the left and right side of the brain, coming into a place of self-awareness and balance. Close your eyes and find your breath. And I invite you to begin to follow the flow of your breath as it moves in and out. And start to see how that feels in your body. Slow, deep breaths for 3. And 2. And 1. And press the feet down into the floor a little more. Feel that spine lift. Feel your heart lift towards your hands. And join me in a cleansing breath, which is a deep breath in through the nose. And a sigh. Nice. Soften your shoulders down. Rest your hands. Take a moment to just roll out any tension that might be hiding in those shoulders or neck. And we're going to add a twist, which we can do sitting right here in our chairs. Take your left hand, cross over your right knee. Bring your right hand behind you onto the chair for support. Sit tall and nice spinal twist. Breathing for 3. And 2. And 1. And switch sides as you're ready, using your hands to help. Keeping the breath deep. For 3. And 2. And 1. And coming back to center. Heart and belly breathing, placing one hand on your belly, one hand on your heart. And you can close your eyes or keep them open, but I find closing my eyes helps me to bring my attention inside. And our hands are here for some tactile feedback to help us feel breathing. Breathing is very abstract. For some of my students, it's hard to show breathing. It's hard to make it visual, but it's something that we can feel. So with your hands here, make the breath big. Feeling how your belly moves out and in as you breathe in and out. Feeling the gentle rise and fall of the heart as you breathe in and out. And just breathing for 3. And 2. And 1. And relax. Nice job. So I always like to start with a little centering exercise because whether you're watching at home or at the office, you may have been rushing to get here. Who knows what else is on your mind. So let's just settle and arrive.
I needed that.
Excellent. I'm glad that
I think
glad it was
Renee
helpful.
did too.
Yeah. And that's one of the messages I want to really convey today too, is that the techniques of teaching are not for kids or for individuals with special needs. They're for human beings. So we all have nervous systems, we all have breath, we all have bodies, we all get stressed out. So this really is for everybody. I just tend to really think a lot with my special education background about how to take this information and make it meaningful and make it accessible for young people with a whole variety of learning styles. So let's talk for a moment about what self-regulation is, because that's really, I'm delivering yoga for self-regulation today. And self-regulation falls under this bigger triangle of executive functioning skills. And the executive functioning skills that I most often see and hear talked about are the higher level thinking skills, these metacognitive skills of planning and sequencing and problem solving. And these are very important skills. But underlying them, there's this foundational layer of skills called self-regulation, which really refers to the ability to manage your attention, your emotion, and your arousal. So we know this, being human beings, that if we are feeling dysregulated, if our attention is being pulled somewhere else, or if we're not feeling great in our body, or if we're falling asleep, even if we have the ability to be great critical thinkers and use all of these higher level metacognitive skills, they're really not available to us when we're dysregulated. So this is the foundation, self-regulation. Everything else flows from here. And a little word on yoga. Yoga is making its way more and more into various educational and clinical settings, and the early research that's being done is showing excellent results. So you can read at your leisure a couple of studies here, but what some of these studies are showing is dramatic increase in improvement in classroom behaviors for classrooms that are using yoga programs. Programs who treat people with trauma are more and more bringing in yoga, and we can see here that yoga can increase a sense of awareness, safety, and mastery over one's body. And also people who are using yoga at home, parents are reporting reduced sensory and tactile defensiveness, just sort of a general state of better self-regulation. And that's what I feel in myself too when I practice yoga, that I got my stuff together on the days I do my yoga, and it's a good way to feel. So what's yoga? I think that there are some preconceptions and misconceptions about what yoga is, and I want to dispel a few of those because the yoga that's happening in my clinical practice at NESCA probably doesn't look a lot like the yoga that people might be envisioning in their mind. So you may be envisioning sort of the Indian Swami, having a deep spiritual practice. That's definitely not happening in my office at NESCA. Or you may be picturing, I think more commonly, the sort of vision of yoga that we have today in the Western world is sort of the super flexible young woman in her Lululemon pants, putting her leg behind her head, and that's also not what I'm doing in my office at NESCA. Yoga is a Sanskrit word, and it just means to yoke, to join together. So joining our body, joining our mind, joining our breath, joining our attention, joining with our outside environment, and really bringing all of those things into effective balance. And I like this quote from Patabi Joyce, which is, yoga is 99% practice, 1% theory. So I know a lot about yoga, but if I don't get on the mat for a few days, I feel it. I start to get stressed out. I start to get out of balance. So it's really not about knowing, it's about doing. But today I'm going to be giving you a lot more information than experiential practice. So yoga is deeply rooted in this idea called the kosha system. And what the koshas are is they're just a model for sort of conceptualizing what it means to be a human being. And you can think of this as like layers of an onion that you start to peel away that make up the whole self. So this is a pretty old system. It comes from a Vedic era text from about 6th century BC, and it has gone on to form the basis, among other things, for modern yoga and also for Ayurvedic medicine. So in the kosha system, our outermost layer is this dense physical body that we can touch and see and feel. This is called the food layer, Annamaya kosha. We are what we eat. Here it is, right? And then under that is this really interesting layer called prana, pranamaya kosha, or energy layer. And the word prana actually is interchangeable for breath, for energy, and for life force. So the difference between an inanimate object and a living being, human, animal, plant, is that we've got prana. We've got this energy infused through our systems. And we feel it and experience through the breath, primarily. And then underneath this layer of prana, we've got what I call the weather system, the mental and emotional activity that's moving through our system. So we know living in New England that the physical landscape doesn't change that much. The roads are there, the buildings are there, but it sure can look different in January than it can in April. And it's the same with our emotional and mental systems. We have these weather systems that move through us. Maybe we're having a day when we're just edgy or just happy and relaxed, and the mental and emotional activity really colors the experience of our day and how we perceive the world around us. These outer three layers we're going to talk about some more. I'll touch briefly on the inner layers. The wisdom layer, the green layer in the picture you're looking at here, that's our natural wisdom. We don't have to think too much about that. Our heart knows when to beat, our cells know when to divide. That stuff is pretty much happening behind the scenes. But it's also the layer of intuition. When we sort of get out of thinking and just have that gut feeling, that comes from that wisdom layer. And then inside that, sometimes I call this layer the good news, which is the bliss layer. So bliss, not necessarily happiness, because happiness tends to be conditional. You know, if things work out the way I want, I'll be happy. The bliss is just there. And when everything else comes into balance and we calm down and we connect with our deeper selves, there's just this really nice, good feeling there. And that's really central to the practice of yoga, that we're not trying to fix anybody. We're not trying to give anybody something they don't already have. It's in there. We're just getting out of the way and bringing ourselves into balance so that we can tap into that wisdom and bliss. How do we do that? So the yoga that we generally think of in the Western world is called hatha yoga. There are actually many forms of yoga. Hatha yoga is the yoga that uses the physical body, postures called asana, uses breathing techniques called pranayama, and uses mindfulness techniques, so mental awareness techniques. So we're really working with the outer three layers in that kosha system. These are the tools in my toolbox when I'm working with my students. So at the physical body level, we've got muscles and bones and the sensory system and the endocrine system and the organs and all that good physical stuff that needs to be working properly. At the energy level, we've got our breath, we've got our autonomic nervous system, so that's our fight, flight, freeze, our sympathetic nervous system response, and that's our rest and digest, relaxation response. That's right there in the energy level. And then we've got our arousal level. So we know sometimes, particularly we see this maybe more with young people, that we can be sort of bouncing off the walls, or we can be falling asleep at our desk, and that's our arousal level. And then, of course, what's the mind up to? We've got the mind layer of where are we placing our attention, how are we feeling, what are our emotions, what are the deeply held beliefs that are driving a lot of our thoughts and feelings. So we're working with all that stuff in yoga. And then I've taken this kosha system and I've put it in an environment, because we don't exist in isolation. We're not a closed system. So here we are, this being with body and breath and energy and thoughts and feelings and all that, but we're also in a sensory environment. And our system is being affected all the time by sights, by sounds, by temperature, by all of this sensory information that we need to integrate and know what to do with. We also need to be aware of where we are in space and time. And we also have a social environment. So when I made this graphic, I made it look a little bit overwhelming and complex, because that is the world we live in. So using yoga from a sensory level, we can use yoga-based techniques to take a sensory break. So my individual on the left here is using a pose called Shavasana, which is just lying down, relaxing. He is experiencing deep pressure because he's actually got sandbags on his legs and belly underneath a whole big pile of blankets. He's in a quiet, comfortable space. We're listening to music of his choice, and he's just unwinding and letting go of his day. Now, my young man here on the right, he's having a pretty rich sensory experience. He's doing a great pose, one of my personal favorites, called box handstand, hands on the floor, feet on the wall. And what he's getting here, aside from having some fun, is a huge amount of proprioceptive input, which is deep pressure input into the joints. That's what occupational therapists call heavy work. He's also getting a whole lot of vestibular input. That's our balance system in the inner ear. When we turn upside down, wow, our brain really thinks hard about that. Hey, something's going on here. So he's getting all that, and he's engaging his core. And when we engage our core, we wake up the central nervous system, and we help raise our arousal level. So he is diffusing some high energy after school. My other guy is chilling out after school, and they're both giving their nervous systems what they need through yoga. So we also exist in this spatial and temporal environment, and this is really where my Yoga Connects curriculum comes from, is noticing over the years working with students who have various regulation challenges that helping them to ground themselves in time and space is really, really helpful and important. So on the left here, this is the schedule board from my Yoga Connects program. So my young yogini here knows exactly what we're going to do and in what order. And I have found that anytime I'm working with anybody with anxiety, answering those questions, whether it's visually or verbally, depending on their learning style, of what are we going to be doing? How long is it going to take? What's going to happen after that? When am I going to be done? Having those that information available can really help to soothe anxiety. So then in the center, I've got a reference pose, a picture of a pose called Downward Dog. And on the right, I've got one of my young students doing and experiencing the pose. She has also got an additional layer of visual support there. If you can see, she's got yellow rubber hand and foot markers under her hands and feet to help her place her body in space. So she's having this great sensory experience, a downward dog, again, proprioceptive and vestibular input, her head's upside down, and she's doing with it a whole lot of visual support so that she knows where she is in time and space. Okay. And then we can really use yoga in social ways too. Yoga is a very powerful tool for connecting with others. If anyone here takes yoga classes, you may have had that experience where you walk in at the beginning sort of, here's my space, here's my mat, get out of the way, and you walk out at the end sort of wanting to give everyone a hug. And that's where yoga opens us up, and it makes us feel safer, it makes us feel more open. So doing yoga in a social context, whether it's partner poses, whether it's sharing a practice together, or whether it's using yoga to play some fun games, is also a really nice application for yoga and for kids who need to work on social skills as well. You can nicely integrate the two. Thank you. So as I was saying before, these are techniques for humans, not just for kids. We can start by using these techniques ourselves. And one thing to keep in mind as an adult, whether you're a parent or a teacher or a clinical professional, is you have the strongest energy in the room. As the largest body, the biggest energy system, you have the strongest energy in the room. And the way that we are feeling really has a ripple effect on the young people who are sharing space with us. Sometimes it's easy to forget that because we might not be the loudest voice in the room, we might not be the biggest presence in the room, but we do have the strongest energy in the room. So how do we regulate ourselves? 3 really key strategies. One is movement. When in doubt, get moving. So if we're sitting at our desk and we're sort of fading after lunch and falling asleep, we'll walk up and down the hall and wake us up. If we're sitting at our desk and we're agitated and we're anxious and we're crawling out of our skin, we'll walk up and down the hall and settle us down. So movement is the universal regulator. And when in doubt, get moving. And I say that with full awareness that many of the young people we're working with need a whole lot more movement than they are allowed to get in a classroom setting. So that can be a challenge, but movement will help. Grounding. So grounding just means feeling our connection to the earth, feeling the direction that gravity is pulling on us, feeling stable, feeling in our bodies. For young people who sort of dance their feet when they're waiting in line, or lean on the wall, or slide their hand down the hallway, or crash into people, looking for grounding. And we can find a lot of grounding like that young man was doing, laying on the floor under sandbags, just literally being close to the earth, feeling pressure on our bodies. Grounding is also feeling connected to time and space. So routines and rituals. For many of my young people, particularly on the autism spectrum, the whole day is very routine and ritualistic, and that helps them to ground themselves in space. And I tend to use that. I tend to build a lot of ritual and repetition and routine into our sessions. Breathing is also very grounding, because when we pay attention to breathing in and breathing out, we're paying attention to right now. We're not remembering the breath that we took 10 minutes ago. Breathing is always right now. So that's why it's such an important part of mindfulness. And centering. So also finding ourselves in our center. So where am I in space and where am I right here? And again, breathing is the technique, meditation, something called body scan that we'll do a little bit of at the end where we just guide our attention through different parts of the body. And we'll come into some more specific techniques pretty soon. So at this time, I'm going to step over here and model, and you can follow along with your visuals at home. This is another page from Yoga Connects. And this is a breathing flow. And breathing flows integrate all of those things. So we're going to start by grounding. We're going to check out our feet, make sure they're straight and strong and pressing into the floor. And then we're going to close our eyes and take a moment of centering, just feeling your breath moving in and out. And as you're ready, we're going to add movement on the breath in, circling your arms all the way up, lifting the heart as you go. And as you breathe out, bringing your hands down to heart center. You can do this seated in a chair as well if you prefer to stay seated. Breathing in all the way up. Breathing out all the way down. This is called a sun breath. So you might imagine as you're circling your arms up that you're scooping up this big ball of beautiful, bright sun energy. And as you exhale, you're drawing it into the heart. And one more on your own, big breath up. And down, and then pausing at the end of the exhale to just notice how you feel. Just integrate. And then keeping our feet planted. This one's called waterfall breath. If anybody has knee, hip, or back issues, please listen to your body and take it easy with this one, or maybe decide it's not for you. If you're practicing with me, just soften your knees. This is waterfall, so let's be soft. Soft and fluid like water. We're going to flow all the way up to the top of the waterfall. And then we're going to bend our knees, flow all the way down, touch the floor at the bottom of the waterfall. And keep going, matching your movement to your breath. So your breath sets the pace, your body's along for the ride. Breathing in all the way up for 3. And 2. And 1. Coming up, slowly shrug the shoulders. Pause again for a moment, just feeling and integrating that little bit of movement. And now hopefully we're feeling awake and regulated and ready for some more information. All right, so as I've said, breathing is a really important part of working with our autonomic nervous system and working with mindfulness. So a little bit of breathing 101. When we breathe in, it's like hitting the gas pedal on our nervous system. So there's our heart rate goes up a little bit, our blood pressure goes up a little bit, everything goes up a little bit. When we breathe out, this is hitting the gas pedal on our nervous system. Heart rate slightly goes down, everything relaxes and settles. So as we move through our day, when we're balanced, we're just sort of gas brake, gas brake, gas brake, gas brake, and that looks like this. So balanced breathing. We breathe in, we breathe out, we breathe in, we breathe out. We keep this pattern going, and our nervous system activity and our heart rate stays pretty level. Breathing is the common language between the body and the mind. There's always a two-way feedback loop happening. So that kind of balanced breathing is sending a message to the mind that says, all good, carry on. When we start to get stressed, when we start to get tense, what happens in our body? We start to close shoulders, we start to tense our belly, we start to collapse, there's less room to breathe. We tend to breathe shallowly and rapidly. And what we tend not to do is exhale fully. So this visual here of stressed breathing, we breathe in a lot, we breathe out a little, we breathe in a lot, we breathe out a little, we breathe in a lot, and here we go amping up more and more and more of that gas pedal being pushed, more of that fight, flight, freeze activity in the sympathetic nervous system. And the message to the brain here is be alert, danger, something's happening. And that message does not care whether you're being chased by a tiger or whether you might have to take a math test. It's the same message as far as your body and your nervous system are concerned. So what can we do about this? We can change our breathing pattern. We can have a relaxed breath. We can breathe in a little. We can breathe out a lot. Breathe in a little. breathe out a lot, and start to slow everything down and hit that brake pedal and come back into balance. When we do this, the message to the brain is relax, relax, all is well, slow down. This is where we go into rest and digest. Our body knows I don't have to be ready to run from that tiger. I can just function properly and digest my food and feel good. So let's try this. I'm going to teach a breathing technique called calming breath, and it's based exactly on this. Breathe in a little, breathe out a lot. The breath in is through your nose, and the image I like to use for the breath in is smelling a flower. So it's not an aggressive sniff. We don't want flower petals up our nose. We're just enjoying the smell. And the breath out, I like to use the image of holding a very full cup of hot cocoa or tea. We want to cool it. We don't want to spray it all over the room. Right? So in through the nose, out through the lips. In through the nose, out through the lips, sustaining the exhale for as long as you can. In through the nose. To help sustain the exhale, start to draw up and in on your abdominal muscles. There's more breath in there than you think there is. Keep going. Keep going till you're empty, and then in through the nose. Stay with this for about 30 more seconds, maybe closing your eyes. Let's do it long enough to really feel the effects. Making each exhale longer than the one before it. And if at any time you feel strained or uncomfortable, just come back to normal breathing. And when you finish your next exhale, take a cleansing breath. Sigh it out. And take that moment, that pause to just integrate and see how you're feeling now. So calming breath is really powerful. It's my go-to strategy. I like it because I can use it when I'm driving in the car. Obviously, eyes open when you're driving, right? But it doesn't require props. It doesn't require a whole lot of anything. It's just breath. It's always there for us. The challenge with calming breath is it's pretty abstract. How am I teaching this breathing exercise to a concrete learner who can't really visualize a cup of hot cocoa in his mind? How am I teaching this breathing exercise to somebody very, very young who's already lost patience with all of the words coming out of my mouth? Well, the goal is a long, slow exhale, and there's lots of ways to do that. One of my favorite ways is to hiss like a snake or buzz like a bee. So let's do it. Big breath in, hiss as long as you can. Yeah, there's more in there than you think, right? Keep going. Good. And then bee breath. We're going to do this one twice. First, just a buzz like a bee. Big breath in. And this is an actual pranayamic technique called Bharani breath. And now we're going to use it. Yeah, it feels cool, right? Now we're going to use it as a sensory break. So let's say we're in a loud classroom. There's a lot going on around us. We need to shut out that noise. I'm going to do this. It looks ridiculous. You can laugh at me at home, but please try it. We're going to plug our ears. We're going to close our eyes. And we're going to buzz like a bee. So yeah, you get this cool vibration, and it's kind of like the whole world disappears for a few seconds because you can't really hear or see anything else. So I love that one. Other ways to extend the exhale: chanting a sound like Om, singing a song. So there's lots of ways to help people get a slow breath out without getting too heady about it. Great. So the most misused and well-meaning cue that I hear adults using with kids is just take a deep breath. So what's the problem with just take a deep breath? I just slammed on the gas pedal. My tires are spinning out. right? And the other problem with this is I'm guessing that people are using that cue when a child is already starting to melt down and stress out. And here you've got this already overloaded nervous system and you're adding a new demand. Even if it's a really well-intentioned new demand, it's not going to work. And I will say over the years, I've had quite a few kids come into my office and tell me, oh, I tried breathing, that doesn't work. So let's bring breathing back, right? Let's make it work. Let's do it right. So let's take that idea of calming breath. Let's use that as a self-regulation technique. Self-regulation is a process and a practice. So we can't just take the intellectual knowledge of calming breath, stick it in our back pocket, and pull it out someday when we have a child having a temper tantrum. Ooh, I have this great breathing exercise. Picture a flower and picture a hot cocoa, and it's not going to happen, right? In those desperate moments, sing a song with me. But if we're going to do the groundwork really for self-regulation, stage one is exploration. So we can move to the next slide here. And the exploration is all about finding an effective technique, because just because I really like how calming breath makes me feel doesn't mean that you do. And there's lots of techniques to try. It's better to have one that you're really comfortable with and really working with than have 8. Because again, when we're in those stressed out moments and we're sort of deep into the limbic system, we're not in critical thinking mode. We're not assessing which of those 8 techniques is going to be the one that we should use in this moment. So introduce one technique at a time and observe the effects. See if doing this breath or whatever the technique is with a child calms them down or amps them up. They'll show you. They may be able to tell you, but they'll show you. Follow the child's lead. I think that kids are already really good self-regulators for the most part. They're just not always doing it in the ways that parents and teachers would like them to. Not always the safest or most effective or most appropriate ways. So a lot of what I'm doing in my office at NESCA, particularly with a new student, is just sort of hanging back and watching. What does your body want right now? Are you going to burrow under this pile of blankets and pillows and hide from me? Are you going to climb up on my desk and jump off? No. Are you going to start smashing into the walls or throwing balls around? What do you need right now? And then let's take whatever you need and sort of fine-tune it into a technique that's going to be a little more effective and successful. Keep it playful and fun. I like to use the language, be a scientist. I like to present to kids, if this imagery resonates with them, that we are sort of in a laboratory and their body is the lab and they're the scientist and the technique is the experiment. We're just running experiments and seeing what we notice. And as I said, stick with one. So first we explore. Next is co-regulation. So this is the process of sort of holding a child's hand and helping them learn how and when to use the technique. Build it into the day at a regular time. Don't wait till it's needed. Model using the technique. So I might say, oh, you know, I'm feeling a little tense. I think I'm going to use my calming breath. And do that in a really obvious way so that the child can see it is helping me. Cue your child to use the technique. Hey, this looks like a moment when it might be good to try that calming breath that we've been practicing every day before dinner. Then start to identify times or situations when the strategy might be helpful. Like, hey, I know that spelling tests are hard. I wonder if we could make a plan that next time you're going to have a spelling test, first you try calming breath. And then encourage kids to be reflective and tell you what they're feeling. Then we move to self-regulation, applying a technique independently. So now we have gained some mastery over the technique. We've gained comfort and confidence. We understand why and when to use the technique. We know how to do it. And this is really important, learning through experience that the technique will help. Not learning because the teacher said so. Not learning because mom said so or dad said so. Learning that I've tried this technique 50 to 100 times, and every time it makes me feel better, and I trust it. And the other piece of that trust is that the technique will be allowed and available. So I'm not going to get in there for that spelling test and have the teacher say, no, you will not do calming breath right now, get to work, right? So that might require some communication with teachers and other settings to make sure that the technique is available to the child. And then we get to this really cool stage called mastery, where we keep reinforcing this positive feedback loop between the body and the mind. And consistent practice really starts to support a more resilient emotional state. So maybe we use the technique less often because we need it less often. We have a less reactive nervous system. Along with that, I'm feeling empowered because now I know I'm not going to be helpless if I'm sort of panicking before my spelling test. I know what to do, so I'm feeling more confidence, less anxiety. And over time, with repeated practice, that calming breath becomes my default, my go-to when I get stressed. And I actually had that happen today on the way in on 93. I did. I was here. I thought I had plenty of time. I hit that traffic on the exit ramp. And instead of gripping the steering wheel more tightly and muttering under my breath, which may have been my go-to response years ago or on a bad day, I found my calming breath. So this is really the power of yoga in action when we teach it as a system and as a practice. So I want to take just a moment of sort of shameless self-promotion here, and then I'll open up for questions. And the therapeutic yoga program at NESCA offers a variety of services. It's myself, and we have another yoga teacher on board named Ann Noel McCowan. And we offer weekly therapeutic yoga sessions, which typically are done one-on-one, and they really are individualized. So we see a wide variety of students working on a wide variety of goals. What makes the yoga therapeutic versus recreational really is that individual targeted, working towards goals and paying attention to progress towards those goals. I personally do a lot of parent-child work. I tend to work with a lot of young people who have developmental challenges or communication challenges, and working together with parents allows them to then go and take those strategies home and continue to practice. Some of my students are doing that independently. For all of my students, I do encourage home practice. So NESCA is offering the Yoga Connects program, which is a complete visual yoga curriculum that my students use with me in the office, and they also take home and practice at home with family, in the classroom, or in other venues in their life. And I'm also offering adaptive yoga, which is yoga for people with a variety of physical challenges. Adaptive yoga really is based around seeing what and enjoying what our bodies can do, regardless of any challenges that they might be experiencing. Beyond the therapeutic yoga program at NESCA, NESCA has a great host of offerings, neuropsychological testing and transition services and counseling and special events. So I do encourage you to check out their website. And I am going to stop talking now and see if there are questions. And if we have a minute or two at the end after questions, we'll end with a little bit more yoga and just me feeling really good and calm.
Hannah, that was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, one of the things that my director is saying, come a little closer. Oh, yes. Okay. So I'm trying to make the questions appear here. I'm not having a whole. Can you come over and help me, Renee? We may see. Oh, so she's putting it on you here. I can't seem to scroll them. Okay, great. Wonderful. All righty, so we're going to look at them together. Some of them were all about this when we started. So is there music that you can suggest to use?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say that I use music with some, but not all of my students, and that also comes from that exploration stage. If I put on music and I notice that they seem really distracted or the music is too stimulating, then I'll turn the music off. With many of my students, I do the session without music until we lie down and relax, because then there's less information coming in. They can just enjoy the music. I love music without words, instrumental, sort of relaxing classical music, a lot of yoga-specific music. A couple of artists that I love are Chinmaya Dunster or Snatan Kaur or Deva Premal. In the day of Spotify, you can just go on and create relaxing yoga station and get all kinds of good stuff to listen to.
Mm-hmm. So, what that puts me in mind of a video I saw where a yoga teacher in a classroom hit a gong, and the kids had to listen to that sound disappear.
Yeah.
And you could see them kind of leaning in to hear that sound going very, very, very faint. And by the time the sound was gone, the kids were totally relaxed.
Absolutely.
They were focusing on the disappearing sound. I thought that was very effective. Okay, so resistance from children. Oh, I'm sure you never see that.
No, kids walk in saying, I love it.
Right.
I'll tell a story actually about a young man who I've been working with for a while who now is creating his own yoga sequences and teaching them to his classmates. So that's where we are now. Day one, he stood at my door, he put his hands on his hips. I believe he was about 7 at the time, and he said, there are 2 things you should know about me. Number 1, I hate yoga. Number 2, my anger bubble is very close to the surface.
Oh.
So, all right, game on, kid, right? So I do meet a lot of resistance. I meet a lot of resistance because I think kids are often feeling overscheduled and they feel that their downtime is being imposed on by something new. I meet resistance because it is something new. It's an unfamiliar setting. I'm an unfamiliar person. I meet resistance because they're coming in to do something that's really hard for them, which is calming down and controlling their bodies and being alert and attentive and present with me. I meet a lot of resistance. What I tend to do is view yoga as an invitation. I never force. I always invite. You do have to stay in the room with me and, hey, I'm going to do some yoga. So if I have a child who's not ready to get on the mat, I'm just modeling. I'm just doing it and making it look fun. And it felt so good and I feel so calm. And sooner or later, they're going to buy in.
So for this particular young man, how long did it take for him to buy in?
Couple of weeks.
Couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
Yeah. What I did with him actually on week 1, we didn't get very far. Right. He had set his boundary. I respected it. I spent some time talking with Mom. Yeah. Week 2, he came in and I had my yoga mat set up and I had a wall of bolsters, which are big yoga pillows, about 10 feet away from my yoga mat. And then I had a yoga mat over here. He walked in and I said, this is the wall of trust. You don't cross it. Neither do I. We're not ready yet. You stay over there. I'll stay over here. I'm going to do some yoga. And that's how we started. And he did start.
You intrigued him.
Yeah, he wanted to move those pillows away before I did.
It's good for kids. So I think this is a teacher who's asking how old do you believe the student should be to best benefit from the self-regulation techniques? And she teaches kindergarten and grade 1.
Okay. I would say that kindergarten and grade 1 is right at that cusp where kids really are more in the co-regulation stage. Mm-hmm. They're probably not at the point where they're going to self-apply a strategy, although sometimes kids surprise me. Mm-hmm. But that's a great age to be teaching techniques and to be doing all that groundwork of how do we use these techniques, when do we use these techniques, modeling them, using with the classroom. So I think it's a great place to start.
Yeah. One of the things that I know from working with kids with trauma is that co-regulation period can last a long time.
Yes.
And sometimes high schoolers still need that co-regulator.
Absolutely.
And sometimes even kids in their 20s and 30s. Mm-hmm. But the fact that they know that you're going to help them co-regulate, I think is a very, they like that feeling.
Yeah, absolutely.
That you'll be there to help them.
Absolutely. And I like when I'm able to deliver the message, especially with some of my older students, and I do have students in their 20s and 30s with developmental challenges, when we co-regulate and they're feeling calm, saying to them again and again and again, I didn't do this. Those are your feelings. Those feelings are from you. You did it. You breathed. You did it. And just really reinforcing that message that this is yours.
Yeah. And you're just modeling.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so we do have some time for some more questions. I believe we're at the end of the ones that people have typed in. But I really have to tell you how much I love that bee thing.
Cool. Yeah.
I'm still remembering it. That
Great.
was wonderful.
Great.
I'm going to use that all the time. So if at work, Renee, you hear me buzzing, that's why. And I believe we should teach the whole staff that. I mean, excellent. I think that would be hilarious if everybody started buzzing.
If you do it all at once, it can make quite an impressive noise. I had a group I did a presentation for a public school special education department. I had about 200 people in a gym, a big echoey gym, all buzzing at the same time, and that was fantastic. I highly recommend it. Yes.
Well, we have about 5 minutes left, so I'm going to give everybody a chance to type in some more questions if you do have them.
And if not, I can lead people out with a body scan, which is another nice self-regulation technique.
Scan.
All right.
So it doesn't look like anybody, I think they want to see the techniques, honestly.
Okay.
So let's end with a body scan.
Okay, body scan isn't a lot to look at, but I will invite you to, if you are in a place where you can comfortably lay down on the floor, to do so. If you're at your desk or at work, maybe just sitting comfortably or resting your head, forehead and hands, closing your eyes, taking a moment again to ground your feet, so feet are lined up straight and strong and flat on the floor. And the body scan is just systematically moving the attention through the body, which helps to bring us into the present moment. It's also a really nice technique for developing concentration and listening skills. Start with your feet. Drop all of your awareness all the way into your feet. And just for this moment, give your feet your full, undivided attention. Noticing the bottoms of the feet. Noticing any textures in contact with your feet, whether you're barefoot and feeling a rug or a floor, or maybe you're feeling shoes or socks around your feet. Notice the temperature of your feet. Fully notice and feel your feet. And then gradually move your attention up into your ankles, lower legs, knees, upper legs, and hips. Feel your whole body now, your whole lower body, rounded and relaxed. Moving your attention now up into your belly and lower back. Feeling mid-back and rib cage. Feeling heart and the space around your heart. Feeling your shoulders, upper arms, elbows, forearms, hands, and all 10 fingers. Feel the whole middle of your body now, calm and relaxed. And moving attention up into the throat, chin, nose, eyes, ears, forehead, and the top of your head, feeling your whole neck and head and face now, calm and relaxed. See if you can feel your whole body at once, whole body in perfect balance and harmony, calm and relaxed. Feel into the space around your body, creating a bubble of calm and relaxed energy all around you. And take a moment to just breathe into that space. And let's gradually begin to bring ourselves back, deepening the breath. Take a cleansing breath in through the nose, hold for a moment, and sigh it out. Opening the eyes, drawing hands to heart. We'll end, as yoga is always traditionally ended, with a bow and a Sanskrit word, namaste. And namaste means my heart bows to your heart. Namaste. Namaste.
Namaste. Okay. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was a pleasure.
It was fun.
This was a blast.